Hey everyone, welcome back. We are moving into June now, and for a lot of people, Social Security is not just another electronic deposit hitting a bank account on a predictable schedule. It is the money that keeps the entire month functioning. It is what covers rent, groceries, prescriptions, utilities, insurance, and all the other expenses that seem to stack up and compound before the next payment ever arrives. And even though June looks relatively uncomplicated on the payment calendar this year, the broader situation surrounding Social Security still feels anything but settled. Benefits are already reflecting the 2026 cost of living adjustment. Early projections for next year's COLA are starting to generate attention and conversation. Medicare costs are continuing to chip away at some checks before recipients ever see a dollar. And persistent questions remain about service delays, overpayment notices, scam activity, and what the long-term picture of this program actually looks like for the people depending on it most. So today, I want to walk through the June 2026 payment schedule, but also the context that surrounds it. Because for many households, the real question is not simply when the money arrives, it is whether that money is genuinely holding its ground once it gets there. Before we get into the specific dates, I want to ask you something honest and direct. When your Social Security payment comes in each month, does it still feel like there is a little breathing room left after the major bills are handled? Or does most of it disappear almost immediately before you have had a chance to exhale? The June 2026 payment schedule. Let us start with the payment dates themselves, because June is considerably cleaner and more straightforward than May was. If you receive SSI, Supplemental Security Income, your payment is scheduled for Monday, June 2nd. Since June 1st falls on a Sunday this year, the payment shifts to the next business day. There is no complicated calendar adjustment, no weekend shift pulling the payment into a different month, no confusion about timing. If you began receiving Social Security before May 1997, or if you receive both Social Security and SSI, your Social Security payment is scheduled for Wednesday, June 3rd. May's 3rd fell on a Saturday, which moved that payment earlier. In June, the 3rd lands on a Wednesday, so this group returns to its normal expected timing. For the majority of Social Security recipients, those receiving retirement, survivor, or disability benefits who enrolled after May 1997, the payment schedule follows the standard birthday-based pattern that most people in this category already know. If your birthday falls between the 1st and the 10th of the month, your payment arrives on Wednesday, June 11th. If your birthday falls between the 11th and the 20th, your payment comes on Wednesday, June 18th. If your birthday falls between the 21st and the 31st, your payment arrives on Wednesday, June 25th. A simple way to keep this organized in your mind: SSI arrives on the 2nd this month. Certain older or combined benefit cases arrive on the 3rd, and most other Social Security payments arrive on the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th Wednesday of the month, determined entirely by your birth date. One practical note worth mentioning: if the deposit is not showing in your account first thing in the morning on your scheduled date, that does not automatically mean something went wrong. Banks post direct deposits at varying times throughout the day, and some institutions are faster than others. Give it until later in the day before assuming there is a problem, and check with your bank before contacting Social Security. And the timing of these payments genuinely matters more than people sometimes acknowledge out loud. When you are coordinating your budget around rent, groceries, prescriptions, utility bills, gas, insurance, and credit card due dates, even a gap of a few days can create real and uncomfortable strain. Someone receiving their payment on June 3rd can address early month expenses immediately. Someone paid on June 25th may need to stretch things across nearly the entire month before that deposit clears. That is a meaningful difference in how a household functions. The 2026 COLA, what it has actually felt like. By this point in 2026, the cost of living adjustment is no longer new news. Benefits rose by 2.5% this year, and for the average retired worker, that translated to roughly $50 more per month when the year began. On paper, that is a real and meaningful number. It is not nothing. But after several months of living with this adjustment, many people are asking a more grounded and honest question. Did that increase actually change anything in day-to-day life? For a lot of households, the candid answer is a little, but not nearly enough. Because even when the Social Security check goes up, the expenses surrounding it tend to move in the same direction. Medicare Part B premiums increased in 2026, and for many recipients, that premium is automatically deducted from the Social Security payment before the money ever reaches the bank account. So while the stated benefit amount is technically higher than it was last year, the actual amount available to spend can feel considerably smaller than the headline number suggests. And then there are the everyday costs that keep compounding. Food continues to be expensive. Housing remains a significant financial burden for many people. Insurance has not become more manageable. Utilities, medical care, transportation, and basic household necessities steadily consume that monthly payment, sometimes before the dust has settled from paying the previous month's bills. So while the 2.5% adjustment provided some genuine relief, it may not feel like a real raise if the rest of the budget climbed right alongside it. Early 2027 COLA estimates. That dynamic is part of why early conversation around the 2027 COLA is already beginning to draw attention. Some preliminary estimates have edged higher because inflation has remained a concern in certain spending categories. A larger adjustment might sound encouraging at first, and in one respect, it genuinely is. A higher COLA would mean a larger monthly check starting next year if the projection holds. But the more complicated part of this picture is understanding why the estimate is moving upward. Social Security cost of living adjustments increase when inflation increases. So if next year's adjustment turns out to be larger than this year's, it may also mean that recipients are still paying more for groceries, energy, housing, healthcare, and other daily necessities. It is a bit like receiving a bigger umbrella after the rain has already intensified. The official 2027 COLA figure will not be announced until later this year, and early projections can shift considerably in either direction between now and then. If inflation settles down over the coming months, the estimate may pull back. If prices continue climbing, the estimate may move higher still. The most important thing to understand is that a larger monthly check does not automatically mean people are getting ahead financially. Sometimes it simply means the system is working to close a gap that the previous year's adjustment did not fully bridge. Service, overpayments, and what the program feels like on the ground. Another important part of the June picture involves how Social Security itself is operating at the service level. The agency has been discussing improvements across customer service, system modernization, fraud prevention, and accessibility for people managing their benefits. From an administrative standpoint, that reasoning makes sense on its face. Social Security processes tens of millions of payments every single month, and a program operating at that scale requires strong infrastructure and accurate records to function properly. But for the person actually depending on these benefits, the test is far more practical and personal. Can you reach a real person when you need help with something? Can you resolve a direct deposit problem without weeks of confusion and waiting? Can you actually understand a written notice when it arrives in the mailbox? Can you schedule an appointment and receive a clear, actionable answer when your benefit amount appears to be incorrect? Those are the experiences that genuinely shape how the program feels to the people who depend on it every month. This connects directly to one of the most stressful ongoing issues in Social Security: overpayments. An overpayment happens when Social Security determines you received more money than you were legally entitled to. Sometimes this occurs because a change in income or personal circumstances was not reported to the agency in time. In other cases, it involves complicated eligibility rules, processing delays, or administrative errors that are not at all straightforward for an ordinary person to understand or contest on their own. The government's position is that improper payments must be recovered in order to protect the program's financial integrity. That rationale is reasonable and understandable. Social Security is a public program, and inaccurate payments create genuine problems for the system. But on the receiving end, if your Social Security check is what covers your rent, puts food on your table, and pays for your medications, an unexpected benefit reduction or withholding can escalate into a financial emergency very quickly. If you ever receive an overpayment notice, do not ignore it, but do not panic either. Read the notice thoroughly and carefully. Examine the dates, the specific dollar amount claimed, and the stated reason for the determination. If you believe the overpayment assessment is inaccurate, or if repaying the full amount would create serious financial hardship in your household, you may have options available, including the right to file an appeal or formally request a waiver. The most important step is to respond thoughtfully and deliberately, and not allow confusion or anxiety to cause you to miss a response deadline. WEP and GPO repeal. Update for affected recipients. Another ongoing development affecting certain recipients involves the repeal of the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. These long-standing rules had reduced Social Security benefits for specific categories of public sector workers and for some spouses, widows, and widowers connected to public pension situations, teachers, firefighters, police officers, and government employees whose careers did not fit cleanly into the standard Social Security framework were among those most significantly affected by these provisions. For people in those categories, the repeal represented a meaningful and long overdue change. Some beneficiaries have seen higher monthly payments as a result, and some were eligible for retroactive amounts going back to when the law took effect. Not everyone reading this is affected by these changes. But if you worked in a public sector role, receive a public pension, or were previously informed that your Social Security benefit had been reduced because of WEP or GPO, it is worth taking the time to verify that your account information has been updated correctly and that the changes have been properly applied to your benefit. Scam awareness. What to watch for right now. Scam warnings remain a necessary and important part of any Social Security conversation because fraudsters are consistently active and they adapt quickly to whatever is in the news. Scammers frequently take genuine, real developments, COLA announcements, payment date shifts, overpayment notices, direct deposit update requests, identity verification prompts, and twist them into fabricated threats designed to manufacture urgency. They count on fear, confusion, and the pressure of a ticking clock to push people into acting before they have had a chance to think clearly. The warning signs remain consistent and recognizable. Anyone who contacts you claiming to represent Social Security and then demands payment through gift cards, wire transfers, cryptocurrency, or any method that feels unusual or irregular is not a legitimate government representative. Genuine Social Security matters are never resolved by purchasing gift cards at a convenience store or by wiring money to an unfamiliar account. When something feels off, slow down, end the call, hang up on the pressure, then verify directly through official channels before sharing any personal information or sending any money. The long-term picture, what is actually being discussed. And then there is the issue that never fully leaves the broader conversation, the long-term financial condition of Social Security itself. The most recent projections continue to point towards significant funding pressure in the early 2030s if Congress takes no meaningful legislative action between now and then. That does not mean Social Security disappears or that payments suddenly drop to zero. Payroll tax contributions would continue flowing into the system, and benefits would remain payable from that ongoing revenue. The concern is that without legislative changes of some kind, the program may not have sufficient resources to pay full scheduled benefits at the levels currently promised. That is why you continue hearing policy proposals focused on raising payroll taxes, adjusting the taxable wage cap, modifying future benefit calculations, changing retirement age rules, or implementing some combination of reforms drawn from across the political spectrum. Every available option involves genuine trade-offs, which is why the debate keeps cycling politically without reaching resolution. For people already receiving benefits today, these ongoing discussions can feel genuinely exhausting. You are not managing your grocery budget around a future policy debate that may or may not produce legislation. You are trying to make this particular month work. And that is a completely legitimate and pressing concern. But it does matter, because the closer the funding deadline gets, the more pressure builds on Congress to act. And generally speaking, the earlier they address the problem, the less disruptive any necessary solution needs to be for people who are already in or near retirement. What to keep in mind as you move through June. As you navigate June 2026, here is what is worth keeping front of mind. Know your specific payment date and plan your monthly budget around it, not around a general sense of when the money might arrive. The difference between the 3rd and the 25th is a lot of days in a tight budget. Pay attention to the actual dollar amount that deposits into your account, not just the stated benefit figure. Medicare premiums and other automatic deductions affect what you actually receive, and those deductions can create a meaningful gap between the headline number and the real one. Treat early 2027 COLA estimates as something worth monitoring with interest, but not something to build your household budget around yet. Early projections shift, sometimes significantly. Read any Social Security notices you receive carefully and completely, particularly those involving overpayments, identity verification requests, or changes to your account status. These are not communications you want to set aside and return to later. And finally, be thoughtful about what you hear through informal channels, whether that is social media, neighborhood conversations, or well-meaning friends passing along things they half heard somewhere. Social Security is going through real changes, and there are genuine, legitimate debates about the program's future. But that is a very different thing from suggesting that your check is suddenly stopping, or that every alarming headline signals something immediate is about to happen to your payment. Your best protection always is understanding what is officially confirmed, what specifically applies to your individual situation, and what remains a proposal or an early projection that has not yet been finalized or enacted into law. Stay informed, stay grounded, and take care of yourself this month.